Folks, the Winnipeg Jets may have played their best game of the season against St. Louis this week, and it might point to some positive signs for the Jets going forward. There's a lot to dive into this game, so let's talk about what went right for the Jets and what things still might need a little bit of tweaking, all on tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets.
You're Locked On the Hockey Jets, your daily podcast on the Winnipeg Jets. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Jets fans. Welcome to today's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Harrison Lee, an avid Winnipeg Jets fan and an online blogger. You can follow me on Twitter at HLLivingLoco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets. As always, if you like what you're hearing, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform of choice. You can follow us on Apple, Spotify, Google, Megaphone, Odyssey, and YouTube. Doing so is free, and obviously keeps you up to date on the latest and greatest in Winnipeg Jets news and analysis, but most of all, we just really love and appreciate your support. So, as always, thank you for making Locked On Jets your first listen of the day. Before we kick off tonight's episode, just wanted to give you a quick update. Obviously, we missed yesterday's episode because, as you can probably tell from my voice and stuff, I'm not feeling 100%, so deepest apologies. I have to talk a little bit quieter. I may have to clear my throat and stuff sometimes. So, just be aware that I might, have to miss an episode or two in the very near future. Hopefully my voice doesn't give out doing these next few recordings, but if it does, apologies, and thanks for bearing with us. Now, like I said, obviously Winnipeg has played the Blues, yesterday evening, and it was pretty cool. And, the Jets had a really nice 4-0 win. Hellebuck got a shutout, which is fantastic. If there's one player who really deserves good things for this Jets team, it's Hellebuck. But, broadly speaking, I think Winnipeg played one of its most complete and best games of the season. I would rank it right up there with the first half of the game against the Colorado Avalanche that Winnipeg ended up winning in overtime. Just a really nice performance, and we saw almost all parts of the team contributing in at least some capacity. And there was some validation for something, a particular line change that I've been recommending. It was more incidental in this case, halfway between a line change and just an extended zone shift for a certain line. But, it actually did pay off in a goal. So, hey, maybe they're onto something here. Maybe Winnipeg will take a look at this actual line combo sometime in the near future. But let's talk about some happier things, right? So, in this game, the Blues, they've come in with a bit of an odd team this year. St. Louis has a really poor defense owing to some injuries and stuff and some departures. And the guys that are still around and healthy are, well, unfortunately trying to pull together some really strong performances, but it's difficult. This is not a team that has a lot of blue line depth and might honestly have a worse defense than the Jets, which is saying something because Winnipeg's blue line is not exactly deep to begin with. But this Blues unit has definitely struggled, and offensively, St. Louis, despite scoring a decent amount of goals so far to start the season, haven't actually been generating all that many offensive opportunities from some prime areas of the ice. So, it wasn't really a strong team coming in, but the Blues have always given the Jets some frustrations, and I still expected them to put up a pretty good fight. And for at least the first period, the Blues actually skated right there with the Jets. They capitalized on some silly turnovers from Winnipeg, maybe some missed defensive reads, and Hellebuck was very much up to the task of stopping pucks. He was tracking every shot, made a couple of really great early saves, and Winnipeg, for their part, actually created some decent scoring opportunities too. They had a couple of really good stuff off the counters. There were some good rush chances. Just exactly what you want to see from this Jets team, especially reeling after that weekend game against the Leafs. It wasn't really a great performance. They did get outplayed, but, not everything in that game was in Winnipeg's control. So, this was a really good chance for the Jets to rebound. And Winnipeg, first 20 minutes, eventful, but ultimately not much going on. It wasn't until the second period where Winnipeg started to boss the game, and after the Jets opened the scoring on a beautiful high to low defensive pass from Morrissey to Scheifele, who was left unmarked in front of Thomas Grice. That kind of, I would say, blew the doors open. Winnipeg had already been controlling, the play up until that point, and after the Scheifele goal, the Jets just never really looked back. St. Louis did have a few decent looks from then on, but the second period and the third period very firmly in Winnipeg's control. You saw a lot more clean zone exits on the defensive side. You saw a good transition through the neutral zone. You saw defensive zone denials, like entry denials against the Blues, which was really good to see. Winnipeg needs to kind of do that and really clog up the blue line and prevent all of those zone entries, because once Winnipeg finds itself trying to defend a defensive zone possession for an opponent, you usually start to see some of the cracks starting to form, and not allowing that to begin with gives the Jets a much bigger advantage in defending through offense. So, in that respect, I saw some really good signs of improvement. A couple of the defensive pairs really stood out. I think Dylan Schmidt had a great night. Morrissey Pionk generally did okay. Stanley-DeMelo didn't really play a lot, but they did tend to handle their minutes really well, which is always good to see. Even if you expect Stanley to not necessarily keep this level of performance up, him playing really clean passes, making good zone exits, all of that stuff alongside DeMelo, it's just good to see. Uh, Especially if this coaching staff wants to entrust Stanley a little more, you got to make sure that he's still doing his job and still facilitating stuff like this, especially with Dylan Sandberg still skating in a non-contact jersey. So, for the three periods that the Jets played, they really controlled the game and really held the edge. I think that there was a lot of good stuff coming out of this, and Winnipeg very much deserved a 4-0 win. Now, I do want to go into some granular details about some of the players who I thought really stood out for me positively, maybe some guys who could potentially have their roles adjusted a little bit over the rest of the season. But before we go into that, I did want to shout out our friends and partners at betonline.net. BetOnline is your number one source for all of the NFL and NCAA football betting you can handle. They've also got you covered for the start of the upcoming basketball season, because obviously the NBA is starting to get into swing, and you're going to need a place where you can track all of the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth analysis on every single game. That's where BetOnline comes in. They've got all of the information you need, including live betting, up-to-the-minute scores, and all of the news updates you can possibly handle so that you always make the most informed bets possible. They've also got other great sports like MLB, MMA, boxing, golf. They've even had Triple Crown horse racing for all of you hockey heads listening. Obviously, a lot of you are Jets fans. They've got you covered with Winnipeg Jets futures, as well as game scores, over-under predictions, all that kind of fun stuff. Whatever it is you're into, they've got you covered. And if you don't like sports for some reason and you're listening to me talk, which I don't know how you could possibly listen to a Jets podcast, but maybe one of you is out there. They've also got Vegas casino games. Maybe you're just wanting a little bit of a change of pace. All this stuff is available all at your fingertips, and it really couldn't be easier to get started. So just register for a free account at betonline.net with your laptop or mobile device, because BetOnline is where the game starts. Hello, friends, and welcome back to this episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets. Thank you for making Locked On Jets your first listen of the day every day. Obviously, we are talking about Winnipeg versus St. Louis, one of Winnipeg's most complete games of the season, a really impressive performance, and just something that we're really happy to see. Now, I wanted to talk about some player performances that I thought really stood out, but before we go any further, from the game to the biggest stories in sports, you can find all of the information and stuff that you want about all of the most important highlights of the day with Locked On Sports Today. They help you go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today is available on all of your favorite podcasting platforms, including Odyssey, Spotify, Google, whichever one you're listening to right now. Also, YouTube. They've got you covered. And again, like our show, it is free to subscribe, so be sure to do so right now. Circling back to Winnipeg, obviously Winnipeg had a very big 4-0 victory. Nice shutout for Helly. And there were some standout performances. One of the players that I want to spotlight is Sam Gagner, because he scored a goal that I think really encapsulated why I want him on the first line. Connor and Scheifele were on an extended zone shift In the third period at this point, Winnipeg was starting to dominate offensive zone possessions, cycling lines, getting pucks deep, all that fun stuff. And Gagner came on and found a beautiful almost like backdoor seam pass, although he was kind of higher towards the faceoff circles. Just sort of one timed a shot that I don't think he was really expecting to go in, but Grice just seemingly missed it. It went into the lower right corner of the net, and a beautiful goal. It's also why I've really advocated for Gagner to move on to this first line. I think Appleton has done about as well as he possibly can, even racked up a couple of assists and stuff. But Mason just doesn't really have like the finishing talent, in my opinion. And I think Gagner would be a more versatile attacker in this role. Mason is best when you use him in like that two-way defensive support role, especially on like a third line. But if you want some immediate scoring jump in lieu of having Ehlers at your disposal, I think for me Sam is the guy to go to. Um, Gagner has really shown some really nice stuff early. This is what his like third or fourth goal already this season. He just seemingly does whatever you ask of him, and he does it well. I mean, he's killed his very limited and controlled minutes so far. Even earned himself a promotion to the third line with Lowry. But I think if you really want to make the most of him, you have to play him with more elite skill. I think Sam is one of those really fundamentally misunderstood players who's a lot better than you think he is, and in fact has really impressed me ever since preseason in camp. But for some reason, he just hasn't been able to really work his way up the lineup. But I think making the most of him, especially with Ehlers sidelined, put him on that top line. I think he'll give you some really nice scoring. It wouldn't even shock me if this year he paced like 20 to 25 goals. This is a guy who slides into just about any middle six out there and does really great numbers in a really nice supporting scoring role. He's got the finishing talent, the offensive positioning, the IQ to recognize those opportunities. Just a great player, and Winnipeg really did well to sign him on such a budget contract. Apologies, folks. You might have just seen a bit of a dropout. We did just lose connection briefly. As I was saying, I think Gagner has just really stood out so far in terms of his offensive positioning, his IQ, his decision making. I really feel like he just finds those soft scoring areas, and it's why I've been advocating for him to get that pump up the lineup, get maybe on the first line alongside Scheifele. I think he's the kind of guy who works really well alongside high end skill. I said he's probably a guy. I don't know if this part got recorded, but I said I think he could score 20 to 25 goals pretty easily, and I think he would do it well, especially if he's paired with a really great center and creator in Mark Scheifele. Speaking of Scheifele, I think it's really worth spotlighting that he has had a really resurgent start to the season. Scheifele, over the past few years, I was starting to lose patience with. It just felt like he kind of quit on Maurice and the team because Maurice, as much as Paul sang his praises, Scheifele just never really seemed to be happy with Maurice post 2017-2018. Ever since that season, their relationship seemed to be more one-sided. Mark wasn't really engaging with the media as much. He looked more tired. I thought his body language was poor. He just didn't seem like somebody who was happy to be playing with the Jets on this team that was playing very negative hockey. And it's hard to blame him. I mean, this is a guy who, uh, has dedicated his whole career to the Jets. He was really excited to continue this Stanley Cup window, and instead, Winnipeg kind of closed its own window on itself and didn't really progress beyond just a round or two here in the postseason, while still playing some really lottery level hockey. So I think in a lot of ways, Scheifele was right to be aggrieved. I didn't love that he maybe didn't have the same level of defensive efforts and stuff on the ice, but in the end, I can say that I do understand it, but that appears to be in the past now. Scheifele's back. He's scoring at a great rate. He's being an elite creator. He's even back checking more. He's been more defensively responsible. Obviously the on ice results still a work in progress, especially playing with Kyle O'Connor and not having Ehlers to facilitate transition. It's asked a lot more of Mark, but he's done a phenomenal job already this season. And I'm just really happy that he's back because this team kind of goes as he does. He's still our most elite center. He is such a fantastic creator. And when he's at his best, I mean, you really see why several years ago he was ranked as one of the top 10 centers in the NHL. Guy was a legitimate force on the ice, at times even like a top 15 player, period, in his best years. And it'd be nice if he could continue that and kind of come back to that form because Scheifele is super important to this team at even strength on the power play, all that fun stuff. And he just looks like he's happy and having fun again, which is super awesome to see. More of that, please. I would love that to be a trend this season, and just happy that guys like him are kind of coming back into the fold and proving their value beyond the season. So we'll keep an eye on that. But of course, there are some other players that I think are worth talking about. Some other really great performances. We'll get into what those might mean for the rest of the season in just a little bit. Before we go any further, though, I did want to shout out one of our other wonderful partners at SimpliSafe. The numbers don't lie. In the last decade, over 4 million people have chosen SimpliSafe Home Security to protect their homes. You don't earn the trust of that many people without doing something right. At SimpliSafe, your safety is the only thing that matters. I've seen plenty of people talking about SimpliSafe before. It gets rave reviews, and a lot of it is because they have cutting-edge security technology powered by 24/7 professional monitoring agents who always have your back. Obviously, SimpliSafe comes with a whole variety of apps and tools to make sure that you have constant security, whether you're at home or away. They've got a great app that gives you lots of security controls. You've also got crystal clear HD live streaming of security feeds. So even if you're out somewhere, you want to take a look at home and see what's going on, they've got you covered. And even if you're not able to monitor your own home, that's why they have all of these monitoring agents who are available to not only monitor the security feeds, but they'll also check in on sensors if they detect any trouble. And if something goes wrong, whether you're away or nearby, they'll be able to dispatch police or first responders to your home in the event of an emergency. SimpliSafe really does blanket you in a level of protection that very few services can even remotely approach. They've got security cameras for inside and outside your house, and they have great smart detectors that, they have motion detectors for evaluating different events so that they'll know if it's a false positive or something that really needs to be checked out. And they've also got stuff for hazard sensors that can detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. So if you're ready to get started, you can customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplisafe.com/lockedonnhl. You'll be able to save 20% on your SimpliSafe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan and get your first month free. Visit simplisafe.com/lockedon to learn more. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. Hello, friends, and welcome back to these closing thoughts on tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets. We are wrapping up our thoughts on Winnipeg versus St. Louis. Obviously, a very fun game for all of us. The Jets dominated. It was good to see. Winnipeg was in control, especially after that first period. The second and third periods were just a great exercise in the Jets just dominating play and passing around for fun. But like I said, some really standout performances that I thought were really worth talking about. I want to say that the second line for me has been really good recently. I've said it before. I think this unit has done really well, but now they're starting to get points for it, and I think it's really worth mentioning that Perfetti, Dubois, and Wheeler have generated some really nice chemistry. Wheeler, since taking a reduced role, has played really well. I think it was something that he's needed for a while, and maybe now that he's not having to be asked to do so much on the first line, maybe he'd even admit his game has really improved. He's able to keep up more. He's creating more. Just some really nice passing, and he works well alongside Perfetti. Perfetti, for his part, scored a goal. It was an empty netter, but in general, you're liking what you're seeing with his passing, his vision, and I think he's really proving that um, for this team and long term, he will be our best distributor. If Ehlers is like your transition expert, Perfetti is the elite passer that this team frankly has never had. I don't know that we've ever seen somebody with his distribution ability and like IQ and decision making. Perfetti is just somebody described him as being smarter than you on the ice, and that is 100% accurate. I think Perfetti, in my opinion, is a genius, and I think he's shown it in more and more. games these days, especially as he grows in confidence and experience at the NHL level. So, really happy for him. The only thing I don't love is that he's getting boarded a lot. People seem to really target his back for some reason, which I don't like. You really want to protect him and make sure that he stays safe because he is a critical contributor of this team in the present and going forward. So, yeah, got to protect Cole, and hopefully people stop shoving him in the back across the numbers. That would be really nice. Other standout performers, I think, Hellebuck obviously gets really big plaudits here for a great shutout. He made some really difficult saves on some very quick opportunities. Wasn't as busy of a game as he's probably used to, but, having a goalie could shut out a really good team like St. Louis, especially a divisional opponent. You just got to be happy about that, and really great to see. Aside from that, I mean, everything else, you saw Barron get a goal, which is nice. That third line hasn't really been amazing this season. Lowry hasn't really gotten going, and in general, I feel like they've tried to shuffle that line around a bit, but it hasn't really panned out with the unit that's gelled. This night, they actually played better. I thought it was decent enough, even if there were some, minor warts here and there, but overall, you're just trying to get that line going because the fourth line with Gustafsson has generally been better in a lot of areas. Axel Janssen Fjallby hasn't exactly been amazing on the fourth line, but that unit at least, Gustafsson can still elevate the play of most of his teammates there and generally get good results. So the third line, nice to see them collect some points. They really need to do a little bit more of it because Winnipeg's bottom six is going to have to supplement for some offense that's maybe not coming from the top six as much, but in this game, didn't matter. 4 goals across the whole lineup. Just a lot of great all-around scoring and some really nice puck movement. Occasionally, a few too many passes here and there, but overall, you really can't complain. I just wonder if it's going to translate for the rest of the season because Winnipeg still has a very long way to go. A lot of games left. Season just really kicked off, but hey, for a start of the season, 3-3 record given what the Jets have had to go through so far, not the worst. We'll take it. Be curious to know your thoughts about this game. Be sure to let me know in the comments below or at my social medias at HLivingLoco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets. Tell me how you're feeling about this start to the season, how you feel about this game, and any thoughts you want me to discuss on a future episode of Locked On Jets. But for tonight's episode, that is going to be all the time that we have. Thank you for making Locked On Jets your first listen of the day every day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. The biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and our famous take of the day. It's available on all of your favorite podcasting platforms, same as the Locked On Jet show is, so like, follow, and subscribe right now. And as always, thanks so much for listening. Have a great night, and go Jets go.